G'day Tigers fans, I'm Konrad Marshall, a senior writer with Good Weekend magazine and The Age, and like most listeners, probably all listeners, a Richmond tragic. I was lucky enough to be embedded with the Tigers for a few years and premierships, and to have written the odd book about that time, including Yellow and Black, a season with Richmond. We're into a new era now, however, so it's time to meet some new faces and I guess reintroduce some older faces. In a series of chats we're calling Conversations with Konrad, and my guest today is Steve Morris.
The look away to Morris. This would be something special for Morris, and it is special.
Down the line, Morris over the top. Superbly done. Paddled in the Morris direction. Dorgan will get there first. Morris works his way to the front.
Welcome, Steve.
Thanks so much, Konrad.
No worries. It's great to have you here. Morris, of course, is the son of 1970s dual premiership player Kevin Morris, yet Stephen took the circuitous route to the club, earning his place at Tigerland after playing in the Sandful. He arrived at Richmond in 2012 and played 87 games as a courageous lockdown defender and then small forward. But his contribution at Punt Road in many ways has greater meaning almost after his AFL career once he joined the VFL team, where he was captain and then coach, helping win a flag and create a culture. He recently became an AFL assistant coach, responsible for the back six in the senior team, and he joins us today for a chat about football and life. I thought I might just take you back to the beginning, Steve, to your experience as a footy supporter as a kid. I'm just wondering what shape that took. Were you the kid who just wanted to watch every game on TV every week? Were you the person bugging your folks to go to games? Were you, cashed up member? Like, what was your fandom like?
Very different to any of those. I wasn't the kid that loved cartoons. There's kids that love their cartoons. I was a kid that just loved watching footy. For the very first day I picked up a footy, I never put one down, and I had a different route because Dad had finished up his playing days and had started his career as a coach. When asked who I supported as a kid, I can't say that I've been a lifelong Richmond supporter, unfortunately. Dad was an assistant coach, and Mum had a saying in the household that whoever paid the bills got our support. And I was born over in Adelaide when he was coaching West Adelaide, but then he coached at Essendon, St Kilda, Richmond, and back to Essendon. So whenever he was assistant coach at a club, we supported that club, but got many fond memories at Richmond as well.
Do you have any favourite players back in the day? Like, were there people you just looked up to, I don't know, either that you came in contact with as a young lad tagging along with your dad, or just people that you loved to watch on screen?
Always loved Richo. Probably the one player that does stand out, though, is Mark Miranda. I don't know why. I feel as though I'd be running around in the rooms, kicking a footy around the corner, and he always was one that gave me his time and sticks in the mind for me. So, I remember running around the change rooms probably in 95 when Dad was an assistant at Richmond, and he was one that gave me plenty of time.
Fantastic season for Richmond, like until the recent era. 95 was what a certain class of fan or a certain vintage of fan could cling to. Let's go to your dad, because you mentioned him. He played 110 games for Richmond, including 2 flags, won a BNF as well before joining Collingwood. Your mum, Jan, played Australian basketball, national level, went to a World Championships, probably would have been an Olympian had the 1980 Games not been boycott. Was it tough living in that shadow, or just like inspirational, aspirational? Like, what was that like?
I definitely looked up to both of my parents. They were wonderful role models for me, obviously, as elite athletes themselves. There's definitely an element of pressure as you're growing up. Mum, as you said, played in World Champs for Australia, could have been an Olympian very easily, and Dad played nearly 200 games of AFL footy, won a couple of flags, won a best and fairest. I guess as a 10, 12-year-old kid, it was even that young, it was spoken about, and there was certainly no pressure from home, but has spoken about, oh, you'll follow in the footsteps of your old man. And probably at that age I didn't feel a hell of a lot of pressure, but I guess when I got closer to being picked up, I had a few injuries and it wasn't working out for me. Missed out on the draft. I didn't play much footy at an under 18 level until my overage year. And I didn't get selected in that. And it was probably then that I realised the pressure that I'd put on myself to fulfil the dream of, like, all I ever wanted to do was play footy at the elite level. And there was probably a moment where when asked the question why I moved over to South Australia, I often sort of say there's part of it was I wanted to put myself under the nose of other clubs, and I think that's one part of it. But there's another part that I was probably pretty embarrassed that I was not good enough to get an opportunity to play at AFL level, and that I'd put so much effort into getting there, and I still wasn't good enough. So I think there's like a little bit of both, to be honest, going over there, and it was the best thing I ever did. But it wasn't all going over there for the right reasons, I don't think.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do want to get to that in a second, but I just want to zoom back to the family farm in Tulane Vale outside of Melbourne. What kind of farm was it, and what was life like working there? Was it, late to bed, early to rise, that kind of thing?
No, it was very much a hobby farm. I didn't get my fingernails dirty too often on the farm. We had plenty of horses running around. We bred some pretty good harness racing horses, Mum when I was young, Mum would get up early in the morning, and routine morning for Mum is doing sort of 6 or 8 Ks of walking, and she'd always feed the horses on her walk, and I'd head off to school, and I went to school in Essendon. And obviously, it was a decent trip, but
that was to St Bernard's.
Yep. So it was a pretty big footy school. I went to St Monica's Primary in Moonee Ponds, and then the sort of natural progression, even though that we lived out where we lived. My sisters went to St Columba's in Essendon, and the brother school to that school was St Bernard's, and I knew they had a pretty formidable sort of record in terms of footy, and put a lot of emphasis on their footy program, and I didn't really want to go anywhere else.
How did they go in the Sun Shield in your year?
Yeah, we were always good in the Sun Shield. My year, we didn't make the Sun Shield final, but we were always we played a part of the ACC competition, and we were pretty hard to beat. I think we probably won 5 of the 6 years throughout high school. It was a pretty good team.
You mentioned the sort of difficulty in not getting drafted after having a tough sort of top age year and an injured bottom age year. When it came to the draft and you were passed over, I believe you also sort of trained with a couple of AFL clubs, 3 or 4, and then didn't get selected in the rookie draft. What's that like? Was that sheer devastation, or did you just sort of did you think maybe you were going to miss out?
Oh, I thought I was probably going to miss out. I was devastated. It was my lifelong dream. I always wanted to play footy, and I was absolutely devastated. I trained with Richmond when I was 16, and then when I was 18, I trained with Collingwood, Melbourne, and Essendon for a week each, and I was hopeful that maybe one of those teams would take a punt on me. I remember sitting in front of a computer, and I was at my godparents' house at the time. I can't even remember why I was there, but I was waiting for the computer to load, and it loaded, and up came S. Valenti. Shane Valenti got picked to go to Melbourne with the last pick. So it was disappointing, and that sort of led to the decision to move over to South Australia, and for reasons that I touched on earlier.
What was it like when you got there? I mean, you mentioned that you might have been moving there for not all the right reasons, but once you land in another town, I mean, it's a little bit like a US teenager going away to college in a different state or something. You're a young man in a different state, in a different city, sort of learning the ropes. Was it a good experience from the get-go?
No, it wasn't. I went over and I signed with West Adelaide, and then probably a couple of opportunities fell through that was expecting to have away from footy. And I was probably maybe 4 months into my stint over there, 5 months into my stint over there, and work away from footy wasn't flying. I was sort of twiddling my thumbs with not much to do. Didn't know a heap of people over there. I was playing SANFL reserves at the time. So it wasn't going as well as I would have liked. I was a 19-year-old kid, pretty naive, thought I signed for a couple of years, but I thought I'd go over there and very naive, thought I'd go over there and play a year of footy and get drafted, obviously, and that just wasn't how it worked out. I broke into the team about 8 weeks into the season. I got pretty homesick, to be fair. I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that I wasn't playing where I wanted to play. I wanted to be playing in the senior team and not kicking the dew off the grass in the morning. I didn't feel as though I was getting closer to my ultimate goal of playing AFL, and I guess it was a bit of a tough time, but I had Andy Collins as a mentor, as my coach over there at the time, and I think he's got a psychology background, teaching background, and I reckon he chose to approach my situation in a really specific way, and he basically said, mate, if you're not enjoying life over here, we're not going to hold you to your contract, just go home. And I think that probably spurred something inside of me that didn't sit well with me. I probably was expecting him and wanting him to show me that he really wanted me to stay. And,
sure.
I'm glad he didn't, because it certainly kick-started something, a real fire in my belly to get to work and prove, I guess, him wrong and many others as well. And that's what I did.
Shows real belief in yourself to give it that crack. I mean, we kind of take it for granted that guys will get recruited out of the second tier comps these days, but it wasn't all that common all that long ago. I mean, even it almost got kicked off with a guy like Michael Barlow, and that wasn't until 2010. So it was interesting that you made that. So you then said you get there, you have this kind of moment of reckoning with Andy Collins, but things don't get easy for you. You have a shoulder reconstruction in 2008, a knee reconstruction in 2009. Probably takes until 2011 for you to really hit your best footy. You win a best and fairest, but not a good year on the park for the team. What was that like, that season?
I think in hindsight, the best thing for me was actually not getting drafted as a 19-year-old. I think I would have been one of those players. My body wasn't ready. I probably mentally wasn't as tough as I became. The best thing for me was probably doing an ACL in 2009, where I learnt how to train hard and be more resilient, and I became a much, much better runner on the back of that. I set my whole work week up to thrive as a professional athlete, really, and I started training the absolute house down away from the footy field, and I got better on the footy field as a result. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was bloody tough. I really struggled at different stages over there, whether to stay and try to play at SANFL level, or whether to come home. And obviously family's a big part of me. I love my family to bits, and that was probably a big decision, me going away from my support network. But as I said, it's probably the best thing I ever did was move away and learn how to cook and clean and pay bills and stand on my own 2 feet, and became a much better player as a result as well.
Sounds incredibly formative. So you joined the AFL shortly thereafter. I think GWS had priority access to you as a non-drafted former player, and then the Giants allowed Richmond to take you in exchange for a pick swap. Do you remember where you were when you kind of heard that was happening? Like, oh my God, I'm headed to Tigerland.
I was over in WA with one of my best mates, Ryan Bleasing, and it's so weird. I actually just didn't believe it until I first saw it in the papers, and I was like, oh, geez, this is actually happening. I don't know, I was just a pessimist about something would fall over, or even if I spoke to Dimmer, and but once I saw the headlines, I thought this is actually real. Everything I'd worked towards was coming true, and I was very excited about obviously realising my dream of playing AFL, but also getting home close to back to family. And
sure.
It was pretty cool. I spoke to Dimmer, and I remember him I was pretty stiff back in the day. I would be scared to have a beer and celebrate and loosen up, and I certainly wasn't about to tell my coach that I was about to have a beer and celebrate and enjoy the moment, but he certainly encouraged me to do so, and I was just relief and excitement.
What was it like when you arrived at Tigerland in those first days? I mean, how different was the club then, or just what was that experience?
It's pretty cool. I sat on the plane next to Ivan Maric, who'd been picked up from Adelaide at the same time, and funnily enough, the only real interaction I'd had with Ivan Maric prior to that was we played against Port Adelaide in a practice match, and he was with the Magpies.
Yep.
All of the Crows players were divvied up evenly amongst the teams, and he was playing with Port Adelaide Magpies, and I think I might have got him with a late shot after he got released to the footy, and this big Croatian just charged after me and grabbed hold of me, and I held on for dear life. Anyway, the next time I saw Ivan Maric, we were sitting next to each other on the flight over as teammates, and I've come to absolutely love the big man.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you about him next. I don't want to make you feel old, but you debuted against Carlton round 1, 2012, and that's 13 years ago now. Mm-hmm. You were playing that night alongside a lot of the bright lights, recent greats, Cochin, Rance, Rewalt, Martin, but also two guys you now coach alongside, one of them being Ivan and the other Chris Newman. It must be fun to kind of coach at a place where you have those sorts of connections.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love working with Ivan. He's such a thoughtful, kind human. We're very lucky to have him as a part of our footy club, and he was a real cultural driver right back as a player, and he still continues to drive those high standards now. And Chris has gone away to Hawthorn, and I feel like he's come back, and he's got so much to add to our young group. He's just an amazing human being first and foremost. I've got some great memories from playing with him, but to be able to coach alongside those guys is fantastic.
1 year into your career, 2013, you're one of the premier small defenders in the competition then, and this was still sort of dark times for Richmond supporters, and they'll hang their hat on whatever they can get, and your ability to shut down the very best small forwards in the game was one of those points of pride, like as a fan, because this was a golden age of small forwards. Like you were standing the likes of Cyril Rioli, Stephen Milne, Eddie Betts at his peak, and I mean that's got to be like the holy trinity of small forwards in the modern era. Was there anything about the craft that you can kind of share about how you did curb the influence of these little forwards, and is there anything that you can sort of pass on now to guys in the team?
Yeah, I loved playing on those best players. I absolutely loved it. It was probably a time where there was a little bit more one-on-one defence. Mm-hmm. I actually struggled to adjust when they brought in a team defence systems. I probably struggled to adjust to that. I really liked going head-to-head with the best of the best and pitting myself against them. There's no doubt that there's different tips and tricks that you can utilise to curb the influence of those gun players. It's just got to fall in within a system now, it's hard to sort of match it with those guys. You've got to be able to take something away from them, you also have to give up different things, and it's what you're willing to give up at the same time that's going to have allow them to influence, but minimise that influence that they can have on the game. So, I'm enjoying working with young players now that are having to play on some of the stars of the competition.
Right, there are guys out there, Dylan Moore, Charlie Cameron, Cozzy Pickett. How do you prep a young guy in your back six to stand one of them?
Yeah, I go through vision and help them understand what scenarios they're likely to be placed in, and what previous players have done on them that's been successful, and I guess what they like to be able to do to have things their own way. So the best that you can prep the players, I think the better they perform on match day.
Were you big on tape when you were preparing as a player? Let's say you were going to line up on Cyril on the weekend. Were you diving right into the tape to kind of...
Yeah, I loved watching tape, but as I've probably confessed earlier, I was a bit of a footy nuffy. I loved watching tape and understanding how I could get an advantage over the opposition, and I knew that I didn't have the ability that most in the AFL had. I had to find a way to not even get on an even playing field, because I certainly didn't get that, but just close the gap between where I was at and where these freakishly talented small forwards were at, and I think that helped close that gap.
Yeah. That same year, you were named the AFL Players Association most courageous player in the competition. I'm wondering, did you always kind of want to be that hard-nosed, dedicated, I will do whatever job is assigned to me footballer? Or, I don't know, when you were younger, did you have dreams of being the free-flowing midfielder that could run all day and get kicks through the middle?
Well, firstly, I don't know that I should own up to this, but I think I was just the club nominee.
Okay.
As opposed to the whole competition, but I'm very flattered that you think that. I played a fair bit of footy as a forward. My last season at Western Jets as a 19-year-old, I played almost exclusively forward and through the midfield at different stages. It wasn't until after I did my knee, Andy Collins said, well, let's put you behind the footy, and I think you can read the game and not have to make quite as many decisions, change your direction. You can see what's in front of you and everything like that. And I don't know whether that was just his sell to me, but it seemed to work, and I really, from that point onwards, I loved playing down back. I love the camaraderie that you can create within a team. It's a pretty special group of men or women, and I absolutely love it.
One more on that famous year. So 2013 elimination final against Carlton. You're there. It's an amazing day. The roar of the crowd when the Tigers came out for their first final in Yonks was something else. So
one of the highlights of my career.
Yeah. I can imagine. And then we get our tails up and we're in front and it looks great, and then things begin to turn after halftime. Chris Judd sort of enters the game and Nick Dygan somehow gets off the chain. It's a really interesting study in like momentum in footy. Do you have any kind of theories around momentum and how it takes hold, and I guess how you can stop it?
Well, I think back then it was actually easier to stop than it is now. Obviously, the 6-6-6 rule coming in has taken away your ability to just flush numbers in behind the footy and arrest some momentum. But now you've got to do it yourself as a group out there. And I think it's been spoken about a little bit lately, but and it's certainly nothing new, but we're investing a fair bit of time into the mental space, and you've got to give players tools to be able to support one another, to support each other. I think that's the way forward. Yeah, helping players develop those tools in their repertoire to be able to arrest the momentum, because momentum's huge in any sport around the world. Certainly, footy's no different.
It's such an intangible thing. wondered how did you coach that as a senior coach in the VFL?
I think just that, helping prepare players for situations that are going to arise. Sometimes we talk about momentum in a negative way, but sometimes we've kicked 6 in a row. How do you stop us getting ahead of ourselves and still focus on the process of what's actually helped us get that result?
Yeah.
So it works both ways, and I think putting players in those situations, and visualisation's a big thing in sport these days, helping them, almost giving them the answers before the situation takes place on match day, so that they know what they need to do to kick themselves into the mode that is going to help them best execute.
So it's as much mental as it is tactical.
Absolutely.
You voted into the leadership group in 2015, which I imagine would have been just an amazing honour to receive. But you also had to change roles on the field that very same year, becoming a pressure forward. You had played in that position as a junior, but it still would have been a big shift in senior footy. And right as that is happening, you begin to kind of struggle on the field when you want to be leading by example because you're a leader, and the results aren't coming for you, or dropped a couple of times that year as well. That must have been a really tough year of footy.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. I remember I did my shoulder in, we played Geelong in a practice match out at Punt Road, and I did my shoulder in that last practice match, and it was hanging on by a thread. I knew I had needed to get surgery on it. It was like, well, do you get it now and miss a fair chunk of the season, or try and battle through? And players have to deal with these situations all the time. But it was very difficult for me. I knew I was copping criticism left, right and centre, and probably wasn't in the headspace to be able to deal with that at the time. I felt like I was letting my teammates down by not executing the role that I was meant to be playing. It was just a really difficult time for me, and I'd get out of the car and be opening the car door with my left hand because I just couldn't even push the door open. And then you go out and you strap it up and go out there on match day and you try and perform to the level that you want to perform at for yourself, your teammates, your family, your fans. And I just wasn't executing. And I think it's made me a much better coach, a much more empathetic person for some of the things that players have to deal with and go through. I think one of my strengths as a coach is I have been able to, I've experienced a lot of the different highs and lows, certainly the lows that players experience. I think I could relate with a lot of young guys that were getting dropped out of the AFL team and coming back, and how can I support them, put an arm around them and help them get back to not only their best footy, but just enjoying their footy and being a better club person around the place. And I think that's been a strength of mine. And if I hadn't endured those sorts of lows throughout my playing career, I don't know that I'd have the same empathy for those players that are going through those struggles now.
Yeah, that makes such sense. 1 year later, 2016, you did your knee. And then came back and played kind of one final senior game in 2017. That's the year we, have our drought-breaking flag, which I'm sure is like at least somewhat bittersweet when you're in the club, but you're not on the ground on that day.
Yeah, not for me.
No, good man.
Yeah, it was. I actually had probably the best month of footy of my career leading up to when I went down against North Melbourne. I was playing some really good footy. I was enjoying my footy. I felt like I was in a good headspace. Worked pretty closely with Emma Murray and felt like I was in a really good space to be able to play the best footy I possibly could, and went down, unfortunately, with an injury, missed 12 months, came back, played against Adelaide. I think we got done by about 14 goals. over there one night, and I got dropped the next week, and then did a hammy and missed sort of 6 or 7 weeks on the back of that. I just was so proud to be a part of the club that had been so low and been able to dig ourselves out of it. Clearly, I loved the club so much, and just to see so many of the boys that I'd worked closely with, bring home the premiership after so many years that we'd had just so much of a drought.
Yeah.
Seeing the smiles on fans' faces, and I just felt so lucky to be a part of all of that, and I'm not even making that up. It was bloody awesome.
Fantastic. There was a game 1 week prior to that flag. That's interesting.
That wasn't quite so awesome.
No, it was the VFL Grand Final at the Docklands. Really close loss. And there were a heap of AFL-listed players that were in that side. I was going through it the other day. Garthwaite, Short, Markov, Bolton, Menadue, Ellis, Lloyd, Stengel, Hampson, Miles, Soldo, Chol, Conker, and others. Now, this was your last game as a senior listed player for Richmond. It was also Jake Batchelor's last game for the club, Taylor Hunt's, Ben Griffiths, Ben Lennon's too. Leno had a shot for goal after the siren from quite a ways away, and it just drifted right. I was there, and I remember it vividly because it was Ivan Maric's last game too. And I remember thinking, like, some guys get to end their career getting chaired off on people's shoulders at the MCG, and some people end it like he did in the gloomy concrete basement of Etihad, getting stitches in his eyebrows, actually. What was the end like for you? Did you know that was the end for you, or were you waiting for an exit interview later?
Nah, I actually had a beer with Dimmer. As I said, I did my hamstring that season, and I went back and played in the VFL when I got dropped, and had one of the best quarters of footy. I think I kicked 4 goals 1 week, then had one of the best quarters of footy that I'd played ever, I reckon, and then I pinged my hammy. And a couple of weeks later, Dimmer said he's coming around for a beer, and I knew exactly what was happening. So I was really, I was open with the footy club that I kind of saw the writing on the wall, but I wanted to know as soon as they knew so that I could prepare for what was next. So it certainly wasn't a surprise to me. I knew that was going to be my last AFL or last game as an AFL player on the VFL list, in a VFL match. But I don't think I knew that I was going to stick around the footy club. I certainly didn't picture myself being here in 2025, all these years later. But I'm glad I did, and it's been a pretty cool ride.
Just to put a nice little gap on the Cats for the Tigers. Morris on his way in. Little right to left bender, and it's done the job perfectly.
Needs the bounce. Can he slip Morris? Hell no. Steve Morris, he's hog-tying everything down there at the moment.
Coming the other way is Morris. What a presence he is. Yeah, Morris, what a mark again.
So you did stay with the club, became eventually a VFL captain, a stint that, I don't know, carried on, and you won a flag in 2019. I mean, was it a different kind of fun? Did you enjoy your footy in a different way? I mean, it's a little more grassroots. You're training at night under lights, like you're playing at suburban ovals. Was there something enjoyable about that?
Yeah, I loved it. I think I'd been in pretty ordinary space. Mentally, like the load of injury and form slumps, and it's a pretty brutal game. And I just had felt a lot of weight on my shoulders for the last couple of years of my career, probably 3 years at AFL level, and I loved playing footy, and I enjoyed getting back and working with young players, enjoying my footy again. And I think playing with that weight off my shoulders was something that I really did enjoy.
I can imagine it'd be really freeing. But then you also step back into kind of coaching there, playing and coaching, and then ultimately just being the senior coach. Did you kind of always know that you wanted to coach, or think that it might be something that would appeal, or when did that shift for you?
When I was really young, because Dad was an AFL assistant coach, it was actually something that was on my radar. Oh, I'll take after Dad, you know.
Yeah.
It was something I was always interested in. I didn't think it was a path that I'd necessarily go down, but it wasn't until COVID hit that I started coaching some scrimmage matches throughout COVID and ended up having to isolate at home for, like, I was only at the club sort of 2 or 3 days a week, and the other days you were completely in this bubble. But I wasn't full time, so that in itself was quite a challenge. But just dipping my toe in the water, working out whether it was a path that I wanted to pursue, I got a bit of a fire in the belly for coaching. It was a way of just getting involved in that competitive aspect, but obviously not playing anymore. It's something that I really enjoy, and working with young players and helping them get to realise their dreams is something that I get great satisfaction out of, and something that sort of really appealed to me over that journey.
You mentioned working with young players. That actually neatly brings me into my next question. I mean, when you were the senior VFL coach, you were kind of famous amongst fans for your player reviews afterwards. You would give this snapshot of what had happened that day in the VFL, and a kind of just a little description of how each guy went. And they weren't blunt, but they were just like, it seemed quite honest, to the point, this is where this guy needs to improve and this is what he did well. And I'm just wondering, with the age of players now, I mean, we're talking about, they're no longer millennials. This is Gen Z. These are Zoomers, and I know people like to say that generation has a sort of fragility or sensitivity. How do you find it working with young players and giving them the feedback that they need?
Oh, there's times that I would have got it wrong, absolutely no doubt. But I do focus on the balance of, like, I'm hoping that the majority of the players, whilst I deliver an honest message, they would know that it comes from a place of care, and hopefully through the relationship I've built up with them over the journey, it gives, they understand where it's coming from. And I'm pretty big on relationships. I'm pretty big on caring for the person first and foremost. And I think that helps you have those honest conversations, and it's always a balance, but hopefully I get that right more often than not.
Is it nice to be able to? Is it nice to be coaching a line at Richmond right now that's like so senior? Like, it has it has older figures in it than most lines.
Yeah, it does. I love, as I said, coaching the backs. They're a different beast. They are self-starters. They drive their own careers largely, and I really enjoy the mix of experience and youth. Being able to lean on Nick Floston, Broady, is so beneficial. But being able to work with young players coming through that are growing their game as well is so exciting, and it's really beneficial to have those relationships. There's challenges that pop up with that as well. Like, I played with Tigger and Broady, and I lived with Broady and Shorty and all of that, and so there's challenges with that. But I think for the most part, the benefit from having those strong relationships and being able to have those honest conversations is pretty special.
What do you reckon helps the younger, like, we've got so many younger players on the list right now. We're in this period of rejuvenation. What do you, in your experience, helps them helps that penny to drop for them to turn and go, I'm going to take control of my AFL career and I am going to be that self-starter or that person driving it?
I think the standards around the place is just so important. I think of one person at our footy club right now that is just amazing in this space, and it's Camden McIntosh. I feel Toby's doing an incredible job of this as well, but they are players that come in, get to work, no fuss, and they drive their own careers. And young players being able to come into a footy club and see this is the way you go about it if you want to get the best out of yourself. And those guys can be really proud of what they're doing to set the next generation up for a career of success.
Excellent. One final one. What's been the biggest surprise for you about stepping in and being an AFL senior coach, or maybe the most delightful thing? Like, what have you gotten out of it that you didn't expect?
I've just loved seeing guys go on and succeed that probably didn't even believe themselves. Mm-hmm. This is probably thinking back to last year a little bit more, or the last few years a little bit more, but seeing guys that didn't believe they were capable of playing AFL at a high standard, or playing at all really, and then all of a sudden they're playing at a high standard and have gone on to have super careers. That's a pretty special feeling, knowing that you've played some small role in helping them develop their game and the belief in themselves to go out and star on the big stage. And we've got a few at our club ourselves, like McKelty's, he's flying at the moment. I'm really excited to see him realise the potential that we saw in him. We've got a number of players, like even players like Jaden Short, and seeing these guys that I played with many moons ago and seeing their development over a long period of time. I think we've been very, well, some would say lucky. I think some of it's good management. The fact that you got so many players that have been late picks and developed into absolute superstars of our footy club, and we've got those guys that have progressed over the course of the last decade, I guess. But the ones that I've worked closely with over the last few years, that's given me so much joy, going and sitting on the couch and watching them fulfil their dreams and star on the big stage.
Beautiful. Well, it was an honour to watch your career unfold, and can't wait to see what happens with the Tigs on the field with you at the helm of the back six. So thanks for coming in and joining us, Steve.
Thanks, Konrad.